Hi, thank you for checking out my video introduction to one of my favorite pieces of photo editing software known as the Gimp. A lot of people might ask, why do I prefer the Gimp over Photoshop or other tools that are available? There's really one basic reason for that, and that's all based on price. If you have a price of Photoshop, you may have already decided that it's a little bit out of your budget at close to $1,000. Photoshop Elements is certainly a lot more reasonable at about $100, but the GIMP is even better. It's 100% free, and it's not Photoshop, but it is a very powerful piece of software. It can do quite a lot. If you're a professional photographer, there's a good chance Photoshop is really what's going to meet your needs, but for most of us amateurs, most of us hobbyists, the GIMP is really a great piece of software and will do just fine. So here is the basic layout of the GIMP. When you first open it up, one of the things that's a little bit different about the GIMP is that the toolboxes, these are not docked to the main screen. So this is your main screen here, where you can open up any images that you want to edit or create a brand new image if you choose to do so. But then you have these toolboxes over here that are separate from that main screen. You can actually make those disappear just by hitting the Tab key on your keyboard. Actually, first you need to click on the main screen, then you hit Tab and those go away. Hit Tab again and they pop back up. Looking at the toolbox, you can see that there are, basically all of the tools that you're typically going to use. The top row here are all your select tools, which I'm going to introduce you to here in just a couple minutes. Right here is your colors. So you've got your foreground color, which by default is black, your background color, which by default is white. If you click on one of those colors, you can change those. So let's say I want some type of red. I can click over here, drag this around. This line right here shows me what my new color will be. Once I'm happy with that, I click OK, and there we go. That's now my foreground color. And if I have the airbrush tool selected, so I can actually airbrush some red on here. I'm going to undo that by hitting Control Z, which is a nice little shortcut. It works not just in the GIMP, that's actually a pretty standard keyboard shortcut for most software. But if it's something that you don't use typically, you may not remember, go up to the edit button there and then click undo. But it also shows you that Control Z is the shortcut for that. I would encourage you to get used to using the keyboard if you can. It does tend to speed things up once you get used to it. It takes a little bit of time to remember what some of those shortcuts are. But anyway, back over here to the toolbox. Each one of these tools, when you click on the tool, down below it you will see any options that are associated with that tool. So for example, with that airbrush, I can change the size of the airbrush just by dragging on the screen here. So you can see they're much bigger. Undo that. I can also adjust the opacity. So, maybe I don't want it to quite 100%. So I can reduce that, and there we go. You can see it's not quite as opaque. And once again, undo that. Then over here we've got our layers and brushes. Layers is a very useful feature. If you're at all familiar with Photoshop, you've probably got some experience with that. I'm not going to get into the layers in this video. Below that though, you've got all your brushes. You can see that there's quite a few available. Some of them are a little bit strange. I can't really think what the use would be of a bell pepper shaped brush, but somebody obviously thought it was useful. So if you want to put a bunch of bell peppers across the sky, that's how you do it. I'm not sure why that's there, but so be it. You can also download other brushes. So anyway, looking at this image here, this is a picture that I snapped just last week, and it was one of those days that reminded me why I live in Southern California. because it's January right now, and you can see this was just a beautiful sunny day. Where I live, it tends to get very hot in the summer, and so sometimes I forget why I live here. But in January, I tend to remember when I see days like this. So anyway, looking at this picture, the very first thing that I want to do with that is it needs to be cropped, because you can see there's just a ton of open space here that doesn't really need to be there. So fortunately, that's a really easy thing to do. I'm going to use my rectangle select tool. So it's the very first tool in the top left-hand corner there. I click on that, and that allows me to select a section of the image that I want to keep. So I just click on the screen, drag, and that box shows the area that I've selected. I can adjust that once I've made the selection just by clicking on the boxes in the corners or at the top and sides. Those pop up as you hover the mouse over that area. So once I'm happy with the selection I've made, then I can crop it just by going up here to Image, Crop to Selection, and boom, there we go. So fairly simple way to do that. I'm going to zoom in just a bit to make sure that that looks right. And again, using the keyboard. This one's an easy one to remember. It's just the plus key. So I'm going to expand that window, get rid of those toolboxes, and there we go. So that's what that looks like. I think I can do a little bit better though. So I'm going to undo and bring back my toolboxes. Actually, I'll zoom out just a bit. I'll bring back my toolboxes. So as I mentioned, when you select any of these tools, all the options related to that tool pop up down below. The option that is going to be most useful for this is down here where it says guides, or actually it says no guides right now, but I'm actually going to use the rule of thirds guides. You may already be familiar with that. If you're not, basically what the rule of thirds says is that if you take your photograph and you divide horizontally and vertically, you divide it into 3 sections. So you basically draw a tic-tac-toe grid across your photograph. And the lines are where you want your main subjects to be. So, and in fact, the intersection of the lines is the most important. So the main focus should be at one of the intersections of those lines. So for example, if this were a portrait, you'd want your model's face, or ideally eyes, to be at one of these intersections. For landscapes, what people typically do is you want the horizon to fall along one of those lines. So with this photo, I'm going to put the tops of the mountains along that top line, and I'm going to try and kind of align the highest peaks, or at least that one high peak there, with that intersection. And then the lower line, I'm going to kind of put that close to the treetops, approximately. So obviously I'm cutting quite a bit out of that picture, but I think it's going to make it look quite a bit better. There is another option that I can use aside from the rule of thirds. Let me bring back up my toolbox. You may have heard of something known as the golden ratio, and here it refers to it as golden sections. Very similar to the rule of thirds, but the ratios are a little bit different, so it's not divided perfectly evenly into thirds. The same idea. A lot of photographers feel that this gives better results. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and stick with the rule of thirds, but either option is there. I would experiment with those. Nice thing about computers is that you can save multiple copies and decide which one you like best. So looking at this, once I'm happy with the selection, once again I go to Image, Crop to Selection. Let's get rid of the toolboxes and zoom in. And I think that looks quite a bit better than it did originally. So got rid of quite a big portion of that image, but I think that's quite a bit better. So once I'm done, of course I need to save it. And this is where the GIMP is a little bit unusual, but it's free. So I'm willing to accept some of the quirks of the GIMP. None of them are major, but this it's just a little odd. When you save in most photo editing software, if you go to Save As, you have the option to save in whatever format you'd like. The GIMP is a little bit different from that. It will automatically save in the GIMP's proprietary format. So this allows you to change the name of the file, but the extension is going to be XCF, which is the GIMP's format. So I will save it as an XCF file, but if I wanted to save it as a JPEG or as a PNG or whatever else, rather than save as, what I would need to do is export. And you can see that it comes up as PNG. I'm actually going to do JPEG, and it will automatically save it in that format if I use that extension. It is smart in that sense. But I'm going to change the file name because I always like to keep the original. So I'm going to call this Sunny Day Cropped. And then I export. And I was already doing a little practice video, and I already did this, so I'm okay with overwriting it. I accept the defaults there, click Export, and there we go, all finished. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.